Look closely at the modern world, and you see a single network dictating the flow of human capital, culture, and power. Ask yourself, which country manages a massive gross domestic product exceeding $20 trillion? Which country claims the highest number of Nobel laureates? Which nation commands a military force capable of projecting power anywhere on Earth within hours? The answer, of course, is the United States. It is the ultimate, unrivaled engine of global supremacy. If this global engine is operating exactly as designed, we have to ask why the people living inside the machine are struggling to survive it. This chart breaks down the distribution of national wealth. The top 1% acquired over 42% of the country's net worth. Look down the demographic ladder, you find a nation losing domestic stability. By 2020, nearly a third of Americans couldn't afford a home. They are instead saddled with inadequate, highly expensive healthcare and a higher education system that traps students in millions of dollars of unforgivable debt before their careers even begin. Add to this a severe crisis of physical safety. In 2020 alone, the nation experienced over 600 mass shootings, leaving thousands dead in routine, everyday environments. The image of the American dream is a carefully maintained illusion. To understand why the everyday citizen faces these compounding deficits, we have to audit exactly how this geopolitical machine was built in the first place. This timeline charts global economic output over the last 2 millennia. For roughly 1,800 years, India and China held the overwhelming majority of global wealth. The United States only spikes into dominance after 1850. The foundation for that spike was laid when European colonizers arrived, bringing diseases like smallpox and influenza. Without natural immunity, the Native American population was decimated by up to 90%. Out of this newly cleared territory, American revolutionaries established a democratic state. Underlying these democratic ideals was a government that immediately operated with a relentless mandate to expand its borders. They treated expansion like a corporate acquisition. In 1867, the U.S. simply bought the Alaskan Territory from Russia for $7.2 million, securing massive future resources. When they couldn't buy land, they took it by force. In 1898, the U.S. overthrew the sovereign kingdom of Hawaii, removed Queen Liliuokalani from power, and annexed the territory for its specific location. America did not become large by accident. By acting as an aggressive colonizer and an ambitious corporate acquirer, the nation maximized its landmass, labor pool, and raw resources, setting the stage for total industrial dominance. When the 2 world wars broke out, the U.S. had a massive geographic advantage. An ocean away from the battlefields, American infrastructure sat completely untouched, while European nations bombed their own cities to rubble. America stepped in as the sole intact supplier of weapons to the Allied forces. They sold massive quantities of arms, ammunition, and vehicles. By the end of the conflict, the economies of France, Germany, and the UK were bankrupt and physically destroyed. The United States, having absorbed Europe's wealth in exchange for weapons, walked away with a massive net profit. In 1944, 44 Allied nations gathered at Bretton Woods to rebuild the shattered global economy. Desperate for stability, these countries linked their currencies to the U.S. dollar, which was pegged to gold. The U.S. dollar became the universal currency of international trade. By 1945, the Allied victory had functioned as a massive consolidation of global wealth into American accounts. The United States transitioned into the post-war era by cornering the financial market while its competitors were quite literally burning. With the dollar established as the primary global reserve, the United States pivoted to defending this new financial architecture against the ideological threat of Soviet communism. The U.S. maintained control by directly interfering in the internal politics of foreign nations. They funded opposition groups, staged coups, and in places like Bolivia in 1964, CIA operatives executed revolutionaries like Che Guevara. Under programs like Operation Cyclone, the U.S. heavily funded and armed proxy groups, including Mujahideen fighters in Afghanistan, specifically to bleed Soviet resources. This map illustrates the physical legacy of that global enforcement. Today, the United States operates more than 800 military bases, spread across 70 different sovereign countries. Geopolitical dominance also relied on a long-term strategy to aggregate global intellectual capital. The U.S. engineered immigration policies designed to siphon off the brightest minds from the rest of the world, absorbing intellects like Albert Einstein. This deliberate brain drain continued through the decades. Brilliant professionals like the Indian-born astronaut Kalpana Chawla brought their exceptional talents to American institutions. Sustaining this global status requires a trillion-dollar cycle of military enforcement, political interference, and the constant extraction of foreign talent to hold the top position. Today, that machine continues to demand massive investment. Hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars are poured directly into the military-industrial complex year after year to maintain global dominance. But back inside the country, that massive external expenditure is matched by a stark decay in everyday life. Citizens navigate crumbling infrastructure, skyrocketing living costs, and widespread homelessness. We can contrast this model with the Nordic nations, places like Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. These nations do not project global military dominance. They do not maintain hundreds of foreign bases. Yet they consistently score vastly higher than the United States in human development, healthcare, education, and overall life satisfaction. A state that dominates the globe while its citizens face systemic inequality, debt, and violence is failing at its primary job. Striving to be a superpower is ultimately a geopolitical flex, a status symbol that starves the very people funding it. Let the dream of being a superpower remain exactly that, an empty dream.